Three spine-chilling true janitor stories reveal unexplainable horrors hidden in the shadows. Jess's heart raced as she parked in front of Crestfield Elementary School, the worn-out building looming like a specter against the night sky. Tales of the school's haunted past echoed in her mind, local whispers taunting those brave enough to enter. But at 35 and a single mother of two, she needed this job, a janitor at a long-abandoned school, if she ever hoped to turn things around. Steeling herself as she stepped into the darkness, she barely caught a glimpse of the crumbling walls, shadows wrapping around her like a suffocating cloak. The moment she flicked the lights on, they flickered ominously, casting jagged, shifting shadows along the dusty hallway. Jess felt it, a weight in the air, thick with dread, as if the building itself was alive, watching her every move. She rolled her shoulders back and pushed forward, her broom whispering against the floor as she swept. But amidst the creaks and groans of the building, faint giggles and whispers echoed between the cracked classroom doors. Panic surged through her. Were those kids? Or was her mind playing tricks on her, just fatigue from a long day wrestling her kids into bed? Her thoughts raced, but the unsettling feeling of being watched gnawed at her. What had happened here? As she wiped down grimy desks, she noticed torn school projects taped crookedly to the walls, covered in chaotic scribbles of pain and confusion. Once, this place had been vibrant. Now it felt like a tomb. Jess stumbled upon a hidden classroom behind a cracked wall. Old projects adorned the room, hanging by a thread, all dedicated to Timmy. She swallowed hard, her throat dry as she watched the names stare back at her from bright, innocent drawings. But there was something sinister beneath it, a boy who had vanished without a trace. The air turned icy as the rumors crashed over her. Why was this room sealed? What darkness surrounded Timmy's disappearance? The night dragged on with each passing minute, making every creak of the floorboards sound louder and more sinister. A child's laughter echoed in the empty hallways, but when she turned to see who it was, nothing greeted her but shadows lurking. Her phone buzzed, snapping her back. Her neighbors dismissed her fears as fatigue. Dismissing them felt like a shallow comfort as the atmosphere thickened like approaching thunder. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the clock inched closer to midnight, Jess was compelled deeper into the heart of the school. Rattling doorknobs and shadows darting just out of sight frayed her nerves. Then, as she rummaged through a forgotten supply closet, she found something that froze her blood: an old, crumpled report about Timmy's disappearance linking back to the school's former principal, a respected man who had suddenly vanished himself shortly afterward. The ominous tendrils of fear wrapped tighter around her heart. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, the message sending a chill down her spine. "You shouldn't be here." Whirling around, she felt a cold breath on her neck, shadows swirling ominously as the whispers crescendoed into a frantic clamoring of voices. What had she unleashed? And as she approached the door to Timmy's hidden classroom, her heart thundered in her chest. A piercing scream shattered the silence, locking Jess in place, reality slipping away as a terrible truth loomed. Would she uncover the horrors that turned this school into a grave for lost souls? Or would she become just another name swallowed by its dark legend? Jess's eyes darted toward the door, her heart pounding like a drum. The scream echoed in her ears, a haunting sound that felt like it reached deep into her bones. In a split second, she had to choose: flee from the room or confront whatever terror lay behind that door. Her feet felt like they were glued to the floor. The whispers grew louder, swarming around her like angry bees wanting to sting. She took a deep breath, clenched her fists, and pressed forward, her hand trembling against the cold metal doorknob. Before she could twist it, the door swung open, revealing a chilling sight. A dim light flickered inside, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The room was filled with old desks, and papers scattered wildly across the floor like the remnants of a storm. Then, she saw them: tiny handprints smudged across the dusty window, each one a testament to innocent lives disrupted. But what really caught her eye was the figure seated at the far desk, hunched over, as if scribbling furiously in a notebook. Jess felt a lurch in her stomach. Was it Timmy? The boy from the drawings? Timmy? She called out, her voice barely a whisper. The figure whipped around, and Jess gasped. It wasn't he a boy at all. A hollow-eyed silhouette loomed, its face warped and twisted, shadowy and indistinct like a cruel trick of the light. You shouldn't be here, it croaked, voice raspy and choked with despair. Jess bolted back, the darkness swallowing her as she stumbled around the threshold. Panic gripped her like a vice. This place was suffocating. It whispered secrets that clawed at her sanity. She was trapped in a nightmare now, and a rush of desperation surged through her. Get out! The figure screamed, though it sounded more like a plea than a command. Shadows swirled around it, beckoning her to flee. But Jess was not the type to run without answers. What had happened to Timmy? What was this creature haunting the halls of her new workplace? Timmy, where are you? She shouted, forcing courage into her voice. In response. A mournful moan seeped from the walls as if the school itself was groaning under the weight of its hidden sorrows. A gust of cold air snuffed out the flickering light, plunging the room into darkness. Jess felt her way through the gloom, desperate to find a clue, any hint of the truth. As she rummaged through the scattered papers, a flash of movement caught her eye. A small figure darted past the door, just a blur, as if wading through the shadows. Heart racing, Jess chased after it, leaving the grotesque silhouette behind. She turned the corner, breathless, to find herself in a corridor lined with murals of smiling children. The cheerful faces contrasted brutally with the tension in the air. Those innocent eyes seemed to follow her, filled with unspoken warnings. Then she heard it again, the laughter, echoing down the hall, light and carefree, but with an edge of something sinister. Mommy! A voice called, sweet and desperate. Jess froze. Was it her imagination, or had she really heard her son? Without thinking, she sprinted down the corridor, every pounding heartbeat entreating her to survive, to find her child. But as she rounded another corner, the laughter distorted into shrieks, morphing into a sound of absolute terror that blurred the lines between reality and nightmare. When she reached the door at the end of the hall, it swung forward, revealing nothing but an inky abyss beyond. Jess trembled, paralyzed by fear as the shadows whispered her name. Help us, they beckoned. The ground beneath her seemed to shift, the walls vibrating as a heavy weight leaned against the door. She grasped the frame with white-knuckled resolve, realizing this was no longer just a job. It was a fight for her life and the one she loved. Yet, deep down, another question clawed at her soul. What would she have to sacrifice to escape this nightmare? As the whispers crescendoed, her breath caught in her throat. The darkness was not finished with her yet, and the truth awaited just beyond the shadows. Jess's heart raced as the whispers deepened into a cacophony, each syllable clawing at her sanity. Help us echoed all around her. But who were they? The whispers twisted in her mind, wrapping around her thoughts tighter, making it harder to think straight. She felt a chill grip her spine. The opening of the door revealed nothing but shadows deeper than the night itself, a void that seemed to breathe, pulling her toward it. Panic surged through her like a jolt of electricity. She could almost feel the darkness reach out a warning or a promise. Mommy! The voice broke through, more frantic now, and without thought, Jess pushed past the threshold, falling into the suffocating gloom. The door slammed shut behind her with a resounding finality. Darkness enveloped her, and her hands flew out instinctively, reaching for something, anything, to anchor herself. The icy sensation of the walls pressed against her, sticky with an unsettling dampness. Timmy, where are you? She called into the void, her voice shaky and uncertain. No answer came, only the echo of her fear, bouncing back like taunting laughter. She stepped carefully, her feet dancing across the cold floor, listening to the sounds around her. The whispers were forming into shapes, indistinct figures coiling within the dark. Suddenly, she saw a flicker, a reminder of hope at the far end of the room, a soft glow. Jess squinted, striding toward it, feeling an inexplicable pull. Was it Timmy? Maybe it was a sign, a way out. As she approached, her heart sank. The light emanated from a single lantern resting on a desk, illuminating a space littered with discarded toys, crumpled drawings, and broken dreams. Each item felt like a memory lost in time. The drawings caught her eye, crude, childish scribbles portraying scenes of joy and sorrow melded together. A sun, a sad face, a fading figure. The whispers escalated, and Jess's breath caught. Now they weren't just whispers. They chanted, a desperate plea from those stuck in this torment. The silhouettes began to gather, their hollow eyes haunting, flickering like the flame on the lantern. "Help us," they cried, their mouths moving but no real sound escaping, just the echo of despair that swallowed her whole. Jess stumbled backward, the reality crashing around her. The haunting figures were former children, lost, forgotten. Ghosts of those who had been here before her, trapped in their own cycle of torment. Were they the ones who had reached out to her before? Never. One of the figures suddenly shouted, "You shouldn't have come. You must leave, or you're next." The ground trembled, and Jess felt a wave of fear sweep over her, heavy and suffocating. She turned, searching for the door, but panic blurred her vision. She couldn't find it. Shadows closed in, their arms outstretched, their voices rising to a crescendo. "Join us in the chaos." Jess felt something pull at her heart, a knowing that she could not shake. If she didn't escape, what would happen to Timmy? Would he become one of them? The whispers were growing louder now, drowning out her thoughts, spinning a web of confusion. With sudden clarity, she bolted toward the direction she hoped was the exit. But then, she stumbled onto something solid, a child's toy, a small red truck. A memory flickered in her mind, vivid and sharp. Timmy had it when he was just a toddler. She dropped to her knees, clenching it tightly. "Where are you, Timmy?" she cried out, her voice cracking. Then a piercing shriek filled the air, reminding her of the incomplete darkness shrouded in rage. Something pulled at the edges of her vision. She looked back to see the figures now moving faster, creeping closer. "Help us, Jess," they howled, their faces twisted, merging into one another. "It's your turn." Desperation twisted Jess's stomach as she felt the ground shift beneath her, darkness bubbling up like a flood. She had to run. She had to find her son. And then, it all went silent. The shadows froze. A low, guttural whisper cut through the air. "You shouldn't have come." Standing in the center of it all, Jess faced a decision. Fight or flee? What would anchor her now? The question loomed in the suffocating silence, heavy and menacing. Step forward, Jess. The shadows beckoned, pooling around her like a thick fog. As icy tendrils reached up her legs, she knew then this was no longer just about surviving for herself. Would she risk everything for the truth and for her son? Her determination flared, and she screamed, "I will not become like you." But as she did, everything before her collapsed into darkness. The last thing she felt was despair closing in, then silence. What awaited her on the other side of this veil? The darkness wasn't finished, and she was about to discover how deep the rabbit hole went. Jess blinked, the silence thick and suffocating, like a weighted blanket wrapped around her. The blackness whispered through her veins, tugging at her mind. Her heart pounded in her chest, each thud reverberating through the void, loud and unsettling. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a shadow that darted just outside her field of vision. Panic gripped her, but she fought it down. There had to be a way out of this nightmare. She had to find Timmy. With a newfound surge of determination, she pushed against the unseen force pressing down on her, willing herself to move. Every step felt like a fight against an unyielding current, as if the shadows conspired to keep her anchored in place. She crouched low, thinking she could sneak past the encroaching darkness, but the air crackled with an electric tension, warning her of the futility in her attempt. "Timmy," she cried again, her voice trembling in the stillness. This time, a response came, but it wasn't from her son. "Don't say his name." A voice slithered through the darkness, low and mocking, almost playful. Jess froze. Time seemed to grind to a halt, and her blood ran cold. "Who are you?" she demanded, the words escaping in a fierce whisper. The shadows shifted, swirling as though they were alive. A figure materialized, tall, with sharp angles and a face obscured by darkness. Jess instinctively stepped back, her pulse quickening. "Someone who wants to help," it said, laughter simmering beneath the surface. "But you need to understand something first. Get away from me," Jess snapped, retreating further into the shadows, trying to shield her heart from the growing dread. The figure raised a hand, as if beckoning her closer, but she wouldn't budge. Innocence has a price, it taunted, its voice weaving through her mind, tickling the edges of her sanity. You are trespassing in a place where children's laughter has turned to cries, where dreams are devoured. Stop, Jess shouted, fists clenched. I want to listen to you. But even as the words left her mouth, doubt began to creep into her thoughts. What if she had stumbled into something far worse than she could comprehend? More figures began to form around her, each face twisted in pain, ageless and hollow. They drifted closer, whispering among themselves, urgency lacing their frantic words. You must leave before it's too late, urged the one with hollow eyes that seemed to plead for understanding. As dread began to gnaw at her resolve, Jess caught a glimpse of something in the distance, an open door framed by a flickering light. Heart racing, she darted toward it, summoning every ounce of courage she had left. But just as she reached the threshold, the ground heaved violently beneath her feet. Panic erupted inside, and she stumbled, but some unseen force steadied her. Gritting her teeth, she stepped through the doorway, only to find herself in a cramped hallway lined with terrors from her past. Why are you here? The shadows shrieked, growing in intensity, their grip tightening around her. You don't belong. You've been summoned. The walls surrounding her pulsed with the weight of history, dreadful pasts, forgotten cries, moments of terror. Jess wanted to scream, but all that escaped her mouth was a whimper as she was captured by memories that weren't her own. Then she saw a flash of red at the end of the hall. It was the small red truck, gleaming under the flickering light, its colors vibrant against the despair. Timmy's toy. He must be near. Timmy, she shouted, hope igniting in her chest. She bolted toward the toy, but the figures surged forward, clawing at her, their faces contorting in rage and sorrow. Stay with us, Jess. They howled, their grasp growing tighter, pulling her back into the suffocating blackness. She struggled, knowing now was not the time to falter. I want tea. Jess kicked free and lunged for the toy, grasping it tightly. Memory flooded over her. Timmy's laughter, his sweet smile. His presence brought warmth, light, and a fierce determination. The shadows recoiled as she clutched the truck, a beacon against the despair. But at that moment, the walls began to shift, and the doorway behind her started to fade. Join us, Jess, they cried, their voices intertwining in ominous harmony. With her heart pounding, she felt the ground tremble beneath her. She was at a crossroads. She could feel the pull toward the darkness and the desperate call of her son. Timmy, she screamed, hard in her throat. The darkness pulsed ominously, and in that moment of hesitation, she realized some doors weren't meant to be opened. Then, a final scream echoed from the void, a thunderous roar that shook the walls and sent cold waves of dread crashing over her. As the hallway began to close in, Jess had to decide, should she dive deeper into the shadows or cling to the last strand of light guiding her home. The choice lay before her, each path fraught with peril. And as her world spiraled, she wondered, what would she sacrifice for love? The roar faded, replaced by an echoing silence. But the darkness was not finished with her, yet it stirred, waiting for her next move. Jess felt her heart race as the oppressive weight of the darkness pressed in on her. The shadows writhed, their whispers rising to a frenzied crescendo. She clutched the red truck tightly, expecting comfort from the familiar toy, but instead, the warmth it radiated felt fleeting, ghostly, like a memory fading too quickly. Don't leave us, Jess, the voices slithered, a chorus of despair that wrapped around her throat. We can show you the truth, what happened to your son now. She yelled, shaking her head violently. It was a trap. She could feel it, the seduction of their promises pulling her deeper. But the flickering light at the end of the hall grew dimmer, the door to her past, and hope receding with it. Timmy, she cried again, more desperate. The shadows recoiled at the urgency in her voice, their whispers turning to hissing as they battled against her screams. Each cry entered the abyss, echoing back in agony, a tormenting reminder of her son's absence. Just a few steps away, the light flickered ominously. She refused to let fear claim her. Jess forced her legs to move, pushing against the suction of sorrow as she navigated the hall, her resolve hardening like iron. But each step dragged her deeper, the air thickening, screaming warnings against her willful march. Suddenly, a vision struck her. brief but shocking a glimpse of Timmy's bright blue eyes staring up at her, filled with confusion and fear. "Mommy, where are you?" he whispered, his innocence cutting through her like glass. "No, no, no," Jess faltered and stumbled, guilt wrapping around her heart like a vice. It was a ghostly echo reflecting everything she feared. The thought sent her spiraling. The shadows lunged, their hands clawing toward her, desperation flaring in their hollow eyes. "You belong here. You are one of us," they shrieked. With a surge of adrenaline, Jess pushed forward, mouth set in a grim line. "Not today." She barreled down the hallway, each lean toward the red truck morphing into a sprint fueled by love and a fierce urgency. As she approached the end, the door pulsed. She could almost see Timmy beyond the threshold, his small frame waiting, rooted in place. "Mommy," he called, the sound both sweet and haunting. But as she reached for the door, a heavy grip seized her ankle. She fell, the shadows encapsulating her like an iron cage. Screams filled the air, her voice mingling with theirs. "I want to stay," she choked, instinctively fighting against the ghostly hands that pressed her down, pulling her further away from the light. The voices became chaotic, a suffocating chorus of demands and threats. "You cannot escape us. We need you." Just then, a piercing wail erupted from the depths of the shadows. It reverberated against the walls, a sound of pure anguish that seemed to shake the very foundation of this horrific space. Jess felt it claw at her insides, ripping her apart. "Timmy!" she roared, desperation clawing at her throat, that single name spilling from her lips like a spell against the encroaching abyss. In an instant, the shadows pulled back in horror. The wail transformed into an angry tempest, a storm of sorrow that blinded Jess for a moment. In that very chaos, the figure of the child materialized before her, a beacon amidst the storm. "Timmy!" she gasped, feeling a flicker of hope ignite, stronger than fear, but the ground trembled once more, threatening to swallow her whole. The door shimmered, the light growing fiercer even as shadows howled in rage. Jess's mind raced. Would the price for love be her own soul? Life hung in the balance, and in a moment of sheer instinct, she lunged for the light while the darkness shrieked in fury. Would she reach him in time? The question echoed, lingering like smoke in the air as the shadows clawed for her, and the walls began to shatter in their furious despair. Jess's fingers grazed the edge of the light. Time stretched, a fragile thread pulling taut as she soared toward hope. The shadows shrieked, their voices melding into a feral roar, a storm of fury swirling around her. Jess felt the cold seep into her bones, an ice grip wrapping around her soul as she propelled forward. "Timmy!" The name erupted from her mouth, a prayer and a battle cry. She strained against the darkness tightening around her, each second pulling her further from the luminous promise just ahead. Then, a surge of warmth enveloped her, breaking through the veil of dread. The light pushed back against the shadows, illuminating the hallway with a brilliance so intense it seared her eyes. "Mommy!" Timmy's voice lilted sweetly, slicing through the chaos. Jess reached out, stretching, feeling the magnetic pull of her child anchoring her. She took a step forward, another, but the shadows roared in defiance. Suddenly, she felt a wall of cold, a slick, suffocating touch that gripped her shoulders. "You cannot leave," they hissed, bodies twisting, faces of anguish and despair closing in. "No!" Jess screamed, summoning every ounce of strength. She twisted, ignoring the sting of nails like fingers raking at her skin. "I will not let you take me." With one final push, she lunged, a leap of faith directed solely at the blinding light. The shadows screeched, a cacophony filled with rage and desperation. The door cracked open wider, and in a brilliant flash, she was consumed by the brilliance. Then silence. The stillness was thick, an oppressive blanket that wrapped around her. Jess blinked, disoriented. She was standing in a barren, dusty room, the walls covered with yellowing wallpaper peeling at the edges. The contrast from the darkness was jarring. But where was Timmy? "Timmy!" She gasped, eyes wide. Panic surged through her veins like ice water. She spun around, surveying the room. There was no sign of her son. "Mommy?" A small voice whispered from somewhere hidden. Terror washed over Jess. "Timmy, where are you?" she called, dread coiling in her gut. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she moved slowly, every step echoing off the walls that in the corner. A sun-bleached chair sat abandoned. She hurried toward it, breath hitching as she noticed a crack in the floorboards beneath. Kneeling, she pried at the splintered wood, heart racing. "Timmy," she murmured, trembling. Please, against her instincts, she peered down, and there he was. A glimpse of his bright blue eyes surrounded by darkness, tear-streaked cheeks glaring back up at her. "Mommy, help me." Jess froze, a chill creeping up her spine. The shadows had tricked her. "Timmy," she cried, yanking at the floor, desperate to free him from whatever sinister trap held him tight. "Mommy." His voice quivered, the plea sending a shard of panic through her. But as she clawed, the shadows returned thick, menacing forms slithering out of the corners of the room. They filled every inch of the space with howls of fury, closing in, eyes alight with hatred. "You chose Jess. You cannot have him. You are ours." "No," she screamed, her vision blurred with tears as she braced herself against the overwhelming tide of shadow, thoughts racing. Timmy's light was fading. The chilling entrapment wrapped around Jess's heart tighter and tighter, suffocating her will to fight. The echoes of her son's cries mixed with the cackling of the shadows, an endless cycle of torment and despair. Time slowed. Jess's mind raced. "Let him go," she pleaded, her voice cracking under the weight of the shadows' laughter. Her heart drummed a frantic rhythm, matching her panic as her mind spun in chaos. This fight wasn't just for her, it was for Timmy. And then, a flicker of warmth surged back into her soul, a memory of his laughter, of warmth enveloping her as they played together. Focused, fierce love ignited within her, powerful enough to light the darkness. "Leave him. You can have me, just let him go." The words echoed in the battered room. But the shadows hesitated, murmurs rippling through them, a momentary uncertainty. Time ticked on, the pulse of endless possibilities stretching before her. Would love conquer this horror? The shadows momentarily faltered, but their grips began to tighten once more, dragging her back into the shadows that heartbeat. Jess knew she had to make a choice, one that could either save her son or doom them both to this eternal darkness. And the weight of it all pressed down heavily, as the shadows whispered once again. The air turned icy, pressing in on Jess like a vice. Time shattered as the shadows recoiled slightly, their forms flickering like dying flames. "You cannot give what you do not have," they hissed, their voices a discordant symphony of pain and menace. Jess felt her heart leap into her throat, a primal fear clawing at her insides. "Stop. You don't understand," she gasped, her thoughts clashing like swords, each frantic idea fighting for soundness amid the chaos. He is my son. I'll do anything." But each word seemed to bind her tighter to the floor, as if the very essence of her desperation fed the darkness. The shadows twisted in front of her, elongating into grotesque figures, faces morphing into expressions of agony. They seemed to scream, mouths opening wide, yet their cries were silent, echoing only in Jess's mind. Timmy's voice strained against the confines of the dark hole, his tiny frame shrinking further into the depths. "Mommy, I'm scared." The fragility of his plea shattered Jess's resolve, igniting a fire fueled by fury and love raging within her. "Let him go? You have no right," she shouted, her breath fogging in the cold air. The shadows quivered, their grip wavering, but they only gathered strength, swirling like a tempest around her. She felt the cold seep deeper into her bones, calling back the memories of her son, the hugs, the laughter, the bedtime stories. "How can you be so selfish?" A disembodied voice cut through the turbulence, piercing her heart. "You think love saves? We are everywhere, waiting. We want him." Her head throbbed, the noise overwhelming. Jess stumbled backward, and in her mind, she saw the glimmers of light that had once filled their lives. Ordinary days turned extraordinary with Timmy by her side. She had to fight, to grasp whatever sliver of hope flickered amidst the darkness. "Love is powerful," Jess cried, voice breaking, fingers trembling as she steadied herself against the wall. "I will not allow you to take him." She gathered the strength of each cherished memory, visualizing it as a radiant shield. In a moment of clarity, all from her past flashed before her. A birthday party, baking cookies, splashes of laughter during summer rain. She gathered these memories like stones in her hands, ready to throw them against the depth of the abyss. "Timmy, I'm coming for you." She lunged forward, heart racing. The shadows shrieked in terror, a cacophony that could drown out her love's echoes. "I choose him." But the world twisted, throwing her into a deeper void. Darkness swallowed her whole, and she felt herself slipping. In the pitch black, she fought to reach him, hands extended, reaching for that innocent face caught in the void. Timmy's faint outline shimmered ahead, and she could almost grasp that warmth. Then the shadows struck back. A wave of icy despair washed over her, binding her in place, pulling her into a suffocating darkness. "Welcome home, Jess," they whispered, a malicious harmony weaving through the stillness. Jess's breath quickened, panic clawing at her throat. She felt the warmth of a small hand grab hers. It squeezed softly, a flicker of light in the ocean of dread. "Mommy, don't let go." The shadows recoiled as a blinding light erupted around them, forcing Jess to shield her eyes. But the warmth of Timmy's hand kept her anchored, holding her against the tide. "Hold tight," she cried, grounding herself in that love, pulling against the darkness with every ounce of will. But the shadows, wailing with fury and desperation, surged once more. "You cannot escape," they howled, their forms writhing, forcing her back. Would the light be enough to overpower the encroaching darkness? The battle waged on, the relentless pull of the shadows intense. Jess could not see the final outcome, but she felt the sickening dread close in, the uncertain edge of both hope and despair hanging heavily. What terrifying truth lay in the shadows, waiting to be revealed? The warmth of Timmy's hand felt both like a lifeline and a fleeting ember, barely holding back the darkness swirling violently around them. "Jess," his voice quivered, a fragile thread woven with fear. Each pulse of cold air breathed whispers of doubt into her heart, the shadows gnawing at her courage. "Just hold on. I'm here," she cried out, all while the air thickened with hostility, suffocating her resolve. The fabric of her memories, crisp and vibrant, began to fray under the strain. How long could love withstand such relentless pressure? With every ounce of her will, Jess pushed forward, stretching her fingers to grasp the silhouette of Timmy, which shimmered like silver against a black sea. If she could just reach him, somehow pull him back from the abyss. She could feel the shadows gnashing, their horrible jaws snapping just an inch away, hungry for her despair. "Mommy, I'm scared." Timmy's plea wrapped around her heart like a vice. She blinked hard, tears threatening to spill. The thought of losing him was unbearable. "Timmy, close your eyes," she shouted again, her voice echoing in the void. "Think of our home. Think of the dog. Remember the way the sun feels on your face." Fragmented memories rushed through her mind like a whirlwind. Morning breakfast, the smell of pancakes, the vibrant golden rays spilling through the kitchen window, splashes of summer colors as they chased each other on the grass. Each thought pushed back against the encroaching dark, painting the air with the hues of love. Straining against the pull of cold despair, Jess felt a tightening grip around her throat, as if the shadows were feasting on her desperation. "You cannot hold on to what isn't yours," they hissed in unison, their voices cold and sultry. "Let him go," she screamed, surprising even herself with the force of her words. The shadows paused, as though her fury had splintered their horrific dance. For a moment, she felt their grip loosen, the darkness flickering like a faulty light. "Mommy." Timmy's voice burst through the thickness, more tangible now, closer. The shadows flickered again, uncertainty creeping into their movement. Jess gathered herself, using every remaining shred of energy. "I choose him," she howled, grounding herself in the warmth of love, wrapping it around herself like armor. The shadows recoiled further, shrieking as if her resolve burned them. Suddenly, a clarity descended. This is not a game. A voice, deep and ancient, rumbled from nowhere, nearly shaking her to her core. "You bargain with forces you cannot comprehend, Jess. Love cannot save him." The shadows surged once more, fury igniting their forms. Jess braced herself as the darkness pressed against her, a suffocating weight. Panic surged through her, memories slipping away. Just as she felt the last splinters of hope scatter like ashes in the wind, a blinding light erupted from the depths of her heart, a love that defied even the darkest grip. "Timmy!" she shouted one last time, reaching for the tiny hands that now felt like a tether to reality. The light expanded, illuminating the terror around her, and with it sprang an overwhelming rush like oxygen filling her lungs after a lifetime in suffocation. But the shadows howled, the screams unending, as energy crackled between them, each pulse a plea for release. "You will pay for this defiance," they thundered, wrath pouring from their dark forms, now battered but still looming. In that moment, Jess realized the choice laid bare before her. Would she sacrifice her safety for her son, plunging deeper into the heart of darkness to break its hold? Or would she tear away from Timmy in a last attempt to escape, leaving him to whatever fate awaited here? The light flickered, and the temperature dropped suddenly, as if the air itself held its breath. "Mommy, I'm so scared," came Timmy's voice, thin and trembling, echoing against the chilling silence. "Mommy's here," she whispered, just before the ground beneath her began to tremble, biting into her resolve. What lay on the other side of the light? Would she plunge into an unknown that could either be salvation or doom? Jess's heart raced. Panic punched at her chest as the ground shook violently beneath her feet. The shadows shrieked louder, a cacophony of anguish and rage swirling around her like a hurricane. She felt the piercing chill against her skin, clawing at her sanity. "No!" she shouted, her voice mingling with the haunting wails of the darkness. The light flickered again, wavering like a dying flame. She had to act. Timmy's hand slipped further away from hers, the space stretching like a chasm. Was she losing him? The thought struck like ice-shattering glass, splintering her resolve into a million pieces. "Hold on, Timmy. I'm coming," she hollered, lunging forward desperately. Forcing her limbs to move, she plunged into the blinding light as the shadows breathed around her, a chilling, living fog wrapping around her, its breath icy and malevolent. And there it was. The abyss opened beneath her like an eerie mouth, swallowing the light and replacing it with an agonizing darkness. Jess braced herself, fear coursing through her veins like venom. What if love wasn't enough? What if she let it consume her? Mommy, Timmy's voice trembled again. It echoed like a distant prayer, sparking something fierce within her. She propelled herself forward, the ground crumbling under her. Suddenly, the darkness was still. Silence engulfed her, thick and suffocating. She spun around, the emptiness swallowing her whole. And there, in that deafening quiet, she saw him, Timmy, a few feet away, framed in silvery light. "Timmy!" she gasped, reaching for him. Yet the shadows lurked behind him, creeping closer, their forms twisted and grotesque, seeking to pull him back into their nightmarish fold. "No!" she screamed again, forcing her voice through the panic. "Stay there. Don't move." Desperation clawed at her throat. She felt the rush of something primal and raw, something that flickered like a fire in the depths of her soul. Timmy's wide eyes were pools of fear, pleading with her. "Mommy, please. Hold on." Jess surged forward, instinct igniting her every cell, time freezing as she lunged through the tangible fear. She could almost feel the heat of his small body against her own. The shadows hissed in frustration, swarming like angry wasps, their whispers now a deafening roar. "Your love can't save him. You'll drown with him," they chanted, each syllable a knife slicing through the bond they shared. Jess gritted her teeth, shaking her head violently. "I want to let you take him." Unyielding strength coursed through her. She pushed back against the darkness, every ounce of love flooding her mind, illuminating the void around her. White-hot light erupted from her chest, pouring into every crevice of shadow, igniting fear within their twisted forms. The shadows recoiled, screeching against the brilliance. "This isn't over, Jess. Darkness will always come for you." But she didn't yield. She thrust her hands forward, reaching for Timmy. Just as their fingers touched, a wave of comprehension crashed over her. The shadows were more than an enemy. They were a reflection of her fears, her doubts. In that instant, everything froze. The terror fell silent, and an eerie calm homogenized their surroundings. Jess stared at the shadowy figures, feeling raw power pulsate from her heart as Timmy gripped her hand tightly, his small fingers slipping against her clammy skin. "Let us go, Mommy," he murmured, his voice softer now, filled with the essence of belief. But a darkness, deeper than before, encroached from behind, whispering promises of despair. You'll never be free, we own your fear. As Jess released a breath she hadn't known she was holding, the shadows lurking closer, now promising the inevitable. What would become of them? Could she truly fight the darkness? The space trembled again, the light flickering, wavering as shadows rushed in, consuming everything. The moment felt eternal. Jess! The shadows hissed, their voices now a haunting chorus of her deepest fears. What will you sacrifice to save him? The air crackled with foreboding as the shadows surged, a crushing weight contorting around her. Desperation mounted within her. Was she ready for what lay ahead? In the shifting void, a haunting question lingered, like the knife's edge of her dread. How far would she go to protect her son from darkness that craved to claim him? And as darkness swirled, a new terror began to form on the horizon. A pulse of light succeeded by a chilling whisper. The true horror is yet to come. Jess gasped, her breath stalling in her throat. The shadows pulsated with a ferocious energy, a sinister promise creeping into her heart. Just when she thought they couldn't grow more monstrous, they expanded, the acrid stink of despair engulfing her. Sacrifice, they murmured, their tone dripping with grotesque anticipation. What will you give up to save him? Fear licked at her skin, and for the first time, doubt wormed its way into her thoughts. What could she offer? Could she even protect Timmy from this malevolent force? The darkness, thick and suffocating, twisted memories around her, each one a trap laid with the intent to ensnare. She could feel the love she had for Timmy, how fiercely it burned. With every heartbeat, it bucked against her fear, reminding her of laughter shared, stories told, and bedtime cuddles. Those precious moments were the lifeline she needed, and she wouldn't let them crumble in the face of horror. Timmy, she shouted, grounding herself in that love. Remember all those times we fought monsters together? We're stronger than this. Timmy's small face lit up with courage, bright against the shadows swirling like a storm. Mommy, I believe in us. His voice was weak, yet sturdy. Hearing it surge through Jess like a bolt of lightning. In that moment, she felt the weight in her chest lift. You are right, she shouted, vibrating with defiance. I'll do whatever it takes. I will fight for you. I will sacrifice anything. An inferno of warmth ignited within her, radiating a fierce light in every direction. The shadows shrieked in horror, recoiling she had struck a nerve. No, you cannot take from us, they screamed, but Jess stood resolute. I'm taking back my son, she declared, the heat spreading into the shadows, forcing them back. Every flicker of light burst brighter, a promise of hope against despair. Jess reached for Timmy, fingers stretching in an urgent plea, desperate to pull him from the abyss. Hold my hand. We can do this together. Timmy's small hand slipped into hers. The instant contact sent a shockwave of love cascading through them, illuminating the space around them. Together they stood strong, a barrier against the darkness encroaching from all corners. Together, they shouted. As they united, the shadows thrummed with anger, vibrational thrashes threatening to pull them apart. Yet they pressed forward, determined not to bend to the fears of the past. Your resolve will only bring more darkness. The shadows bellowed, twisting their distinct forms into chaotic tendrils. But Jess's heart surged with a wild, roaring flame, igniting every defiant memory shared with her son. She remembered the way Timmy's laughter danced like sunlight, the pure joy that filled their humble home. That warmth became a shield, ripping through the veil of despair, lighting the path to their freedom. No, you will not win. We will live and love fiercely. Our hearts are stronger than your darkness. The lens of shadow flickered momentarily, unable to sustain the pressure from the glow of Jess's resolve. They writhed and shrieked, spiraling into dread as Jess and Timmy pushed through the chaos, refusing to succumb. With an explosive surge, the ethereal light enveloped them completely, blinding the grasp of despair. The shadows twisted and shrieked, losing their power, their presence fading like mist under the morning sun. You think you can escape, they hissed, their voices diminishing into the ether. Jess pulled Timmy close, the warmth of his body radiating hope. We are free, she whispered, the adrenaline coursing through her veins like fire. But even as they stepped into the fading remnants of darkness, Jess felt a lingering chill, a reminder that shadows always lurked in corners. Together, we'll always be stronger, she vowed. The moment stretched, heavy with possibilities. Suddenly they emerged into a dimly lit space. The outside world looked different, brighter. The morning sun broke through the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of orange and gold, as if welcoming them back. The abandoned school was nothing more than a memory. "Mommy, we're safe." Timmy's voice rang with the chime of innocence, and Jess pulled him into a warm embrace, feeling relief wash over her. But at the edge of her consciousness, a whisper tickled her ear, lingering like a ghost. "You cannot run from the shadows forever," it murmured, coiling like smoke in her brain. Jess tightened her grip around Timmy, a fierce glimmer of determination sparkling in her eyes. "Even if they chase us, we will face them together," she declared, her voice unwavering. Hand in hand, they walked forward, ready to embrace whatever awaited them in the brightness of a new day. Time would reveal all, but they were in this together, stronger than any darkness that dared cross their path. As they stepped away from Crestfield Elementary, Jess knew this was only the beginning of a journey forged in love, courage, and an unbreakable bond. The shadows might always lurk, but they would never own her heart. Not now. Not ever. If you enjoyed this spine-chilling adventure, you need to subscribe now for more exclusive stories like this one. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and keep the horror alive. And don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what just went down. I want to see what you think. Share this video with at least 5 friends who love a good scare. Trust me, they want to miss out on the next chapter. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. Join our growing community today.